this panel discussion is Henri Elemo. Henri, welcome on stage. He's the head of build and integration in the technology organization in Nordea. He's running the implementation of an automated compliant engineering tools landscape for the entire organization of almost 8,000 IT employees. And he's a key driver in facilitating the DevOps change via people, process, and technology. I know that after this keynote, it will take you a little bit time to get on track, but we're not in a hurry. So please welcome on stage also panelists. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So definitely the keynote was very powerful and brings emotions, so thank you for sharing that. For me, about coming and moderating this allyship topic is also that from the bank and technology perspective, we are a big influencer towards the society, to different countries where we operate. And from the technology perspective, when I'm actually reflecting to the first panel talk, there was a lot of discussion about the customer-centric design. I'm representing the very techie side of the technology. We are building environments, we are building processes, how we actually operate, and how our development teams are actually doing that great work to bring those solutions. But actually, exactly the same kind of principles. Without people, process, and technology, what the DevOps stands for, we cannot really success on whatever the role is, actually. Is it techie? Is it somebody coordinating, moderating different things? And I want to bring 4 panelists to join me on the discussion about the allyship on the diverse teams, so that we can deep dive into the topic. So just come to the stage. Yes. Yes. Oh. So first of all, of course, let's go to the introductions. So Sirpa, can you start?
Yep, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Great event, and it's wonderful to be talking about allyship. Very important topic for me. My name is Sirpa Ikola. I'm the VP of Marketing for Schneider Electric for both Nordics and Baltics, so covering also Finland, but the other Nordic countries too, in a company that is here to save the planet, energy optimization, renewable sources, and my microphone is falling off. Sorry about that. And so women in tech is important to us in many ways. We are in an industry that doesn't necessarily have that many women, and we are definitely wanting to have more women, so very important to be here today.
And let's go to the next one.
Hi everyone, good to be here as well. I'm Haring from Tietoevry. Tietoevry is a global Nordic-based but global technology company. We are creating purposeful technology to reinvent the world for good. That's our new company purpose. I'm heading marketing, communication and sustainability, and advancing diversity and inclusion in the broad sense is actually part of our sustainability strategy for 3 years. And we follow up on that. We report on the developments within that on the regular basis as part of our annual sustainability report. So great to be here talking about important things in life.
Yeah, hello, my name is Harri Virtanen. I come from Accenture, which is the largest consulting company in the world. And our job is to do transformation, so transform the society and enterprises into better. My role is that I'm leading the pension insurance business in Finland. Why allyship and diversity is so important for me is that, of course, I've been needing the allyship in my life as well before, because I'm openly gay man, so, you know, and I was closeted in the beginning of my career. It wasn't so easy back in that time. So I've made a a decision that I want to make it better for all the minorities, and that's my personal journey and goal.
You, oops. I realize I have a very loud voice today, but my name is Yesmith Sanchez, and I am originally from Mexico. I work for an organization called Inklusiiv, who is also behind the organization with this, in collaboration with Women in Tech. We are perhaps one of the smallest consultancy firms in the world, as of now, not for long. But we basically do diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting, and we also create and share knowledge around organizations. And my job there is actually to be a consultant on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it has been my biggest privilege to do it for the past 12 years, when it wasn't trendy yet. And perhaps allyship is important for me because never before coming to Finland I realized that I wasn't part of the majority. And then when that reality kind of hits you in the face, it's then very important to both become an ally, and I acknowledge I have plenty of privileges, but I also acknowledge that plenty of hands can be lent to me throughout my path. So this is why this is an important topic for me.
Okay. Thank you for the introductions, and I think we should go to, like in the first panel talk, defining actually the concepts, and I think, Yesmith, you are the best one to define because you're consulting different companies around this topic. Okay,
no pressure, but yeah, sure. Well, basically, allyship is, and perhaps this is the most important concept that we want to think about, allyship is about taking concrete actions. It's not about being aware, it's not about being mindful about things, but it's about being concrete about what you are doing in order to lend your privilege to others. And this is about also standing up for the underrepresented. And this is about you having the power, the visibility, and the voice. And when you acknowledge it, then you lend it to those who may not have it at the moment. So that is how I would define it in a nutshell.
Okay. And other panelists can add into that, but let's go into actually the importance of the allyship. And Kia, could you, from Tietoevry perspective, start? How do you?
Absolutely. So from the company perspective, I mean, diversity is one of our core values. We are developing digital solutions for the diverse audiences. I mean, and of course, we would succeed better if the developers came from diverse backgrounds as well. Diversity drives innovation. You probably all have heard that, but we have seen it is actually true. But from the allyship perspective, I mean, of course, change happens by people, even within the corporations. Corporations are not like empty shells with the logos on the wall. It is about people. So we need the change agents on many levels. Even in a big corporation, you can do your job on the team level, you can affect the awareness of people, but somebody also needs to drive the change across the corporate policies, processes, structures. Extremely important.
Yeah, definitely, and just reflecting to our teams, for example, I think especially on the technology side, we see a lot of people coming to our teams from different backgrounds. I think we currently have about 30 nationalities around our teams, and so both young and elderly, both male and women. Of course, we would actually hope much more women coming to highly technical areas too. But definitely it is something that is naturally coming, and we are also enforcing that from the company perspective. And would somebody else want to add into the conversation?
I was going to say that I think it's also important that when there is inclusion and diversity, people are happier in the company. You produce more, you are more innovative because you know that your voice is heard. And that's why it's important that if you are in a position to actually be an ally for someone, you actually act upon it, but you understand the person's situation first. You don't force your agenda on the person, but you actually understand where the person is coming from and where they want to go, and then you are able to help them, guide them, speak for them, give them opportunities, and that's what you need to do. And I think at Schneider, we're very particular about the fact that it's not a project, it's a mindset.
Yeah.
Allyship is a mindset. We do that all the time, and it's part of our ESG strategies, it's part of our leadership expectations, our values. So.
Yeah, and if I comment to that, I think that the diversity is sort of a fact in the world, but inclusion is always a choice that we make, or companies make. And then especially when you're part of a minority, it's really difficult to sort of advance your own, own field. And that's where you need the allies. The allies really make the change. So, it's really frustrating to be part of the minority if you're the only lady in the room, and in addition to like delivering your results or what you're responsible of, and then you also need to drive the change. I think it's quite a big ask. So should we ask that from the other persons on the room as well? So I think that's why it's important. It's everybody's business to drive inclusion.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say that it should never be the burden of underrepresented groups to actually bring up their voices. Believe me, the burden is enough by being underrepresented, by being discriminated, whether consciously or subconsciously. So it should not be on top of everything, be the burden of underrepresented groups to then educate, to advocate. But those of us who have the privileges, then we can use that in the advantage of others.
Yeah, and just adding into that, I think a lot of on that diversity and the conversation is also that we do end up to situations where things don't match. We come from different backgrounds, we come with different cultures, so we need to have those soft skills to have conversations, if it's a team member, if it's a leadership, top management, to find out the common ground. So there's no other way than actually having that conversation. And just from that, maybe could any of you have some kind of real life example, some where we could get into a concrete kind of actions on your organization where you have seen allyship happening?
I was going to quickly say that I think it starts with language.
Yeah.
It's also important that we have a common understanding what kind of language you use, let's say in leadership teams or in team meetings, and what is appropriate to comment and what not. In a sense, language plays a really big role in sort of making sure that everyone feels included.
Yeah.
And really, it's all about. I guess I would say certainly from a little bit a negative point of view, I would say that it is super important to confront bad behavior. Not to be a bystander, but actually to take action, whether it's a question of someone being gaslighted, ghosted, or even sexually harassed. That you actually stand up and say, this is not accepted. This is not what our company stands for, and not any company stands for. And to sort of then reinforce action and reinforce maybe even policies. What are the expected behaviors here? And I've been in a few situations where I have confronted very strongly. It's nervous for you, it's difficult for you, but you need to know in your heart that it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. And we discussed about the topic before the panel, and what I remember from the talk also on how we overcome from that. So it's a cultural change, and we need to be allies together. But then if we end up into those situations where hard means need to be used, then how do we also end up to a situation that the cultural change actually continues, and we don't end up to having the negative side of the allyship?
That's true. That's true.
One concrete way, if I say another example, we have these lanyards at Accenture. We have like Ride with Accenture, and it's a rainbow lanyard, basically saying that you're an ally, you're supporting diversity. And I don't think that it only reflects on sexual or gender minorities, but it's also like a reflection that you're advancing all minorities. And I think it's super nice. Always when I see at the workplace these colorful lanyards, I think that we are flagging for the values that we find important.
And just adding into that, one thing that I would like to ask you to give some, not maybe examples, but things. How do you see a good allyship? What are the different characteristics of being a good ally? And maybe Yesmith?
Sure. Well, first of all, indeed, in the first characteristic that I have said, but that I think is worth emphasizing, is indeed that you need to do something. So this is actually voicing and echoing what you are saying. It's not about just believing it in your heart, but actually to intervene if there is something that needs to be done. I want to acknowledge that it's quite uncomfortable. It's not like, it can actually be quite shocking when you are, for example, witnessing a situation of the sort. So this doesn't make you less of an ally, but actually a good thing that helps is that if you rehearse in advance, what would you say in a situation of inappropriate behavior? Because then it actually, for example, my voice tends to break when I'm in shock. So then if you rehearse over and over, then it kind of helps. But actually, to return to the question, is about being willing to do something. And the other good characteristic is that you are a good listener and that you are humble, and that this is not about yourself. So this is not about the pain it causes you, that there are injustices in the world. This is about bringing someone else's voices. And I think that this might sound kind of even like not so positive, but I'm saying this because good allies are not doing this because it feels good for them. Good allies are doing it because they understand this is going to have a bigger impact, and that because this is the right thing to do, and that is going to help ultimately all of us. There are other characteristics, but I'm certain you could probably elaborate more on that.
If I continue on that, so totally agree. I mean, being passionate about something that drives you forward, and being curious about people,
Yes.
wanting to meet a person as a whole. I mean, we all come with different backgrounds, we all have our packages, and that has formed every one of us to what we are today. So being genuinely interested and listening skills more than talking, I would say, absolutely. And referring back to actually what you said, what is the role for every leader in a team, is to sort of ensure that everybody in the team are included, and you even get the most silent voices heard. And something that you brought up earlier, I want to repeat it because I find it extremely important. How do you build a culture for a company? How do you build a culture for a team? It is actually your everyday actions. What are the types of behaviors you reward or promote? What are the type of behaviors you ignore or punish? It makes a whole world of difference.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent points, and if I continue or elaborate a bit, I think as a leader it's super important that yourself show the support and be really vocal about it. And also, when you're in a situation when you see something or somebody says something that doesn't feel right, then you sort of take a moment, pause, and say it aloud, that, okay, maybe that wasn't the most perfect way to say it, or maybe we didn't do it perfectly right. So I think that's the job of a leader, and that we need to remember. And also another really important thing is that, when considering, when you have a role or key role that you want to staff, you need to think about as broadly as possible, who are the right people and who is the best fit for the role, not just the first person who is similar to you or yourself. So that's important. And when you choose a person of the minority who hasn't the same sort of background or equality, then you need to support that person in the role. So, you need to make that person successful and help along the way. I think that's the real allyship as well.
And I think that sometimes it's also about like a lot of people, when we speak about privileges, they are actually afraid of actually even thinking about it because it's such a negative connotation to it, the word. But in reality, privilege exists whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And sometimes, actually, it's a very good quality when you are willing to give up, for example, the spotlight that is given to you in order to give it to someone else. It is so very powerful. And many of us who have the spotlight, we get it so very often that we don't need it all the time. So we can always lend that kind of position to others.
Yes, spot on. Continuing on this point, I think it's important to really understand that not everybody experiences the situation like you might have. Your experiences might have been very different from someone else. So empathy is important, that you really observe, read the room, that you understand what a certain person might go through, and then are able to help through that understanding. Sometimes I think the risk might be also that you are very eager to help, but you might become part of the problem. So you need to be very careful not to force upon something that might not be the right thing. And then another point that's been bothering me a lot, and I've been thinking about it quite a lot, is that when it comes to helping women, helping other women, or holding the ladder for other women in career, I would really want to make sure that we are not only coaching and mentoring and asking them to develop this skill and that skill, but actually also sponsoring them. Because sometimes I feel that what happens, and I'm just exaggerating a little bit, but sometimes the woman is coached and the man is sponsored. And as an ally, you need to realize that, and you need to be the one to help that, I think the learning will come by sponsoring the person into the next level. Because if the woman and the man realize that difference, they might feel that, well, I'm clearly not as important as the man because I'm not sponsored for the next role or the next level, but I'm only asked to take courses on assertiveness or public speaking or blah, blah, blah. So as an ally, you need to understand that situation and make sure that that's not happening.
Yeah, and actually to elaborate on that, for example, it's quite often, particularly having a lot in contact with international talents, as no surprise, but it's oftentimes that you are telling like, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, and of course advice is perfect, but then it's a little bit, if we think about it in a deeper way, then we're also sort of putting the burden back then. But then if you do have the power to do coach people, and then at the same time to be speaking to the decision makers about how great these people are, how great these women are, how great these people of color are, how great underrepresented people in general are, then you are actually moving the needle, perhaps in a stronger way even, so that is important.
Very true.
Yes.
Yeah, if I think that this concept of sponsorship is spot on. So it's really like you really need to give the tough business roles to people of minorities and to women. So it's not only like the support roles, but really make them accountable and make them drive the business. And that's the way how you really get the sort of the diversity in action. You just cannot. It's not enough that people are involved. But we need to have the sort of the minorities driving the change and driving the business. I think that's the point.
Maybe we need more examples.
Yeah, exactly. Role models.
Yes.
It was so depressing to start the career. I couldn't see anyone sort of who was similar to me because, I had this secret trait that I was not like the other guys. And it was so, you just couldn't relate to anyone. So, and I know that so many ladies are suffering from that as well. You cannot see, how many female CEOs there are or the board positions. If you don't see the example, if you walk to the room and you're the only lady, it can be so depressing. And then the guys start to talk about the guy talk, with themselves, and then you're excluded. It's so boring, to listen to talk about hockey. So at least for me, it's really painful.
or try being at an event where there is 25 men and you, and then after the event everybody says, yeah, let's go to sauna now. And you're like, how about no? How about no? Yeah, so those are the kind of things that where you're thinking, and then everybody was feeling very awkward. That actually happened to me at the beginning of my career, and I was thinking like, well, I guess I'm going to be alone then.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually following from that one, so one of the topics that we should definitely discuss on how we go from that to being actually a good ally. At least what I see, maybe it's also just that from the universities we are not getting technically enough women, we are not maybe getting certain diversity. One of the great colleagues that I have sometimes is saying that we cannot have that perfect person, but we can have actually a perfect team. So how can we be good allies by getting those minorities, getting the people that are silent or don't know to apply, don't maybe they are not like part of this gender or area, but we actually want them to our teams to actually do the right impact. So would you have some ideas on how to overcome and be a good ally?
I have one point on that, and I think we a little bit touched upon that before coming to the panel.
Yeah.
Job ads.
Yeah.
When we have different job descriptions, we are looking for a new team member to the team. All of us in companies, we tend to make the job descriptions very difficult, very comprehensive. You need to have lots of skills and lots of really difficult skills. And I think we need to be allies if we want women in those roles. Women might be looking at it saying like, well, I only have 60% of these skills, so I can't really apply.
Yeah.
And a man might say, I have 20% of the skills, I'm a perfect candidate for this job.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure, in Schneider, we have one great concept we called bold bet.
Yeah.
And I think it's a wonderful concept, and I'm looking at my dear HR VP here as well. So bold bet is something very powerful, because even if you don't have 100% of the skills for the role, you can be brought up, sponsored as a bold bet for the role, and that gives you the opportunity to actually show what you can. And I think that's a really powerful tool.
Building on it, on our experience, I mean, words do matter. I mean, we actually tested it. I come from marketing and communication, so we did an A/B testing a year ago approximately on our recruitment ads across the Nordics. I mean, such roles that we are recruiting hundreds of people during the year, and it did make a difference. I mean, we were able to grow the amount of female applicants by 32%. So words matter, even small things matter. So this was an initiative driven actually by our communication team, and it was well received. We have since trained all the recruiters, and now it's people globally are learning how to implement these, what were the changes, and we actually used inclusive consultants to help us on that. But even the small things matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and if I add to that, I think it's not just to attract, but then to retain means that you really need to create a culture where everybody can contribute and everybody can be successful. So I think that's important, and then to communicate that as well, because a lot of the time, people are searching for the companies and positions. They scan the sites in the internet or in the web and look at what are the pictures. Are there what kind of representation there is? Is it only white males, or can I see anyone in the picture that looks a bit like me? Super important.
Yes.
What wordings are used. That's all the image that you're building.
Yeah, and I think that actually what you're saying here is like all of what you're saying is very powerful. You were saying, for example, about the bold bet. It will at one time become a safe bet, because it's actually quite safe to bet for something that is different. But because we may not have all the elements in place, and I'm not talking about organization, but in general in the society, it may at the moment feel quite bold, but this is actually quite brave, and actually allyship demands courageous behavior. And actually talking about being courageous, this is something that, for example, also Kia may second me, that in Tietoevry, what you are also doing is that they put themselves out there and said that we are aiming for a 50-50 representation. And when you are saying that in public, you already have accountability. People are going to get back to you and ask you, so you have to do everything in your power. And when it comes to Accenture too, it's like, well, you are pioneering in this aspect of allyship, and you may think that having these colors may be just like a small representation, but imagine how it feels to be that person who doesn't know to whom to speak to, and then physically see that there is someone willing to listen to you openly about these topics. It's very powerful. These things I want to highlight because they may sound little, but they are actually huge, and when it comes to organizational behavior, these are actually remarkable, and I should probably not be complimenting in a panel, but I want to highlight that these actions are actually not super hard to take, and that we could all do something about that.
I comment, as you brought up our 50-50 gender balance target, so absolutely that is something that is set in our diversity charter, which is a part of the sustainability game plan, as I already told. And guess how many wise men come to me and try to calculate whether this is possible to reach within the time frame or not. Quite many, I must say. And my answer every time is that, I mean, when you put the bar high enough, you will reach higher.
Yes.
And the other thing is, of course, that we need to walk the talk, and we are committed to walk the talk. So we are looking into what does it take from us as an organization. How are we promoting people? How are we doing the successor planning? How are we recruiting people? How do we mentor female leaders? How do we train the whole organization around the unconscious bias, etc.? So there needs to be the actions behind, and this is exactly what we are committed to do. Years will tell whether we reach the goal or not, but definitely it is our ambition.
And just maybe adding into what we also discussed, so at Nordic we also have the similar kind of targets, and currently I think we are about 60% female in the whole company, but then when we drill down is that some of the units are more female balanced because that's the nature of the job in the history. Same for the tech, it's more about the male. And then when we think about the previous panel talk, there's also the other diversity things to be considered. So it's what the team also, what are the challenges for the team to find the diversity that is actually needed? Is it more male? Is it more women? Is it more certain cultures so that the actual customer design can be a certain way? Is it about technology kind of background that you actually need? So there's all those kind of diversity topics that need to be taken into consideration, and it can be getting complicated when you cannot grow the team to hundreds of people because you need to keep the amount of people in certain shape.
Yeah, if I comment, we have also, of course, 50-50 targets. So it's I think it's 50-50 by 2025. I think we're doing good progress to reach it, actually. And of course, there are a lot of questions or discussions about, you know, do I now need to recruit a less good person because I need to recruit a female or something like that? Yeah. Luckily, nowadays, less and less. But what I always say in these situations is that, you know, when you end up in the last sort of phase, when you have two persons, you know, they are many times equally as good, you know. Yeah. And then you make a choice, basically. And the choice is what type of person is a better fit and who sort of changes the company or the organization in the way where you want to sort of direct it to. So you never actually choose a worse person. That doesn't exist. So please don't believe that ever. So you always get the position because you're the best person to do the job and to change the future of the company. I think that's essential.
Yeah. And I'm just looking also to our timing, and one of the areas that we haven't really, we touched that a little bit with Sirpa is the pitfalls. I think the diversity and allyship is very much around the culture, so I would like to a little bit ask your reflection about the pitfalls. So what kind of pitfalls have you come against to? What should people think about of knowing, being prepared for?
I can maybe start something that I think I mentioned already, but I can mention it again, is that not to sort of become part of the problem. If you are an ally, you need to really understand, you need to sort of read the room, understand the situation so that you can help the right way, so that you don't just force something upon a person or situation or make it worse. Yeah. So that requires you to also know yourself, know your hidden biases that you might have, and sort of perhaps even open up discussion openly in the company. I don't know if we actually openly discuss about diversity, inclusion so much. It's all in the values, but it could be brought up to a discussion because you do need to deal with those biases that everyone might have, and also to really question the fact that you are not trying to assimilate everybody to be like you, that your path could have been very different. Maybe as a female leader, I might say that, well, you know, I was just brave and I did this and I asked for what I wanted, but I can't expect that everybody else is exactly like that. So I need to understand how I can help and be an ally for a person who might not want to be so open and sort of brave and demanding, but still, you know, has all the right qualities to go forward in his or her own way. So I would start with that, I think.
Yeah. Any other examples on the pitfalls?
Yeah, I think that you cannot just be ticking a box. So, you know, people will see if you are not authentic or if it is not really like your agenda. So you need to be ally like 365 days a year. It's a full-time job. And it reaches out of the job as well. You need to live the values.
Yeah, and I think that, again, I insist some of the common pitfalls is that you become so passionate about it that then it becomes about you. And if you catch yourself that this is becoming about you and about how you are so brave because you're speaking on behalf of others, it's no longer true allyship, because it is about lending our voices, and of course it feels good to do the right thing. It's not about that, but the point is that if it is becoming more self-serving than supporting others, then it no longer may serve this purpose, because then it impairs you from actually listening to what the others are needing. And one of the common pitfalls too is that we assume, or that we may tend to assume that because I have spoken to Harri, then I know everything about what he's hoping at Accenture, for example. But if, like, true allies are willing, as you were mentioning, like, to listen and to listen even more, and it's a 360-day or like a 24/7 kind of job, but also it is something that we will be doing for the rest of our lives, and we will learn all the time, because what inclusion looks like today is not what it's going to look like in 1 month, let alone in 10 years. So.
And it's one thing that Kia, you mentioned about also the mentoring, and thing that came to my mind is that even though that we are thinking about mentoring of certain topic, but I think there are elements also about exactly the 365 kind of living that this is a culture, this is something that you need to also practice. It's not just you need to practice Java or you need to practice a certain role, but you need to also practice the culture and on the mentoring. So there are those elements where you need to disconnect yourself about the or coaching perspective, that you need to disconnect from the topic. So the same for the allyship, to listen and actually listen and don't use your own biases on that side. Yeah. I think we are reaching our end of time. Any last comments, highlights that you want to make?
Yeah, I was thinking, perhaps it has come through quite well from all of us, is that what really makes the good feeling about being an ally is that when you have received a lot of help and sponsorship in your career, you want to give back. You also want to help others genuinely. It's not because it's in the ESG strategy or because it's in the leadership expectations, but because you have been able to leverage people have believed in you, and very often they also say that the next helper for your next career move is someone you don't know yet.
Yeah.
So you want to be the one to help someone who might not know that you are going to be their ally, to really help them to get to the next step because you have been helped. So you're giving back, paying, like they say, pay forward.
Exactly. All right. But thank you. Thank you for the audience. Thank you for the panelists.
Thank you so much.